Eleanor had spent most of her life in the small farmhouse that had been in her family for generations. The wooden floors creaked under her weight as she moved about her home, and the smell of old timber mixed with the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the rooms. She loved the quiet of the countryside, the way the wind whispered through the trees and the birds that sang each morning as if performing a private concert just for her. Life had been simple, predictable, and safe, a rhythm set by her daily routines in the presence of her husband, Henry. Henry was a man of strong habits and firm opinions. He had a way of making everyone feel certain about things, whether it was the proper way to mend a fence or the exact moment to pick the apples from the orchard. Eleanor had admired his certainty for years, finding comfort in the structure he provided. But there was one rule Henry never wavered on, and it cast a shadow over the otherwise peaceful life they shared. Eleanor was never to enter the barn. The barn stood at the edge of the property, its paint peeling and wood weathered by decades of sun, wind, and rain. To anyone else it might have looked like any other old barn, nothing more than a place to store hay, tools, and forgotten machinery. But for Eleanor it was a mystery, a forbidden place that stirred a mixture of curiosity and unease every time she passed by. Henry had always been stern about it. He didn't explain why, only stating firmly, "Some things are better left alone." For years Eleanor accepted this without question. She respected Henry and his wishes, and though her curiosity sometimes nudged at the edges of her mind, she never acted on it. Instead, she wandered past the barn on her way to the garden, occasionally glancing at its tall, imposing doors, imagining what might lie behind them. There were times when the wind made the barn doors creak, and Eleanor felt a shiver of apprehension, imagining ghosts of the past or forgotten secrets moving within the shadows. Despite the mystery of the barn, Eleanor's life was filled with small joys. She tended to her flowers with care, watching the roses bloom in shades of pink and red. She baked bread every morning, the warm scent drifting through the kitchen filling the house with comfort. She spent quiet evenings reading by the fireplace, listening to the wind outside, and occasionally thinking about Henry's words, wondering if one day she might understand what he had tried to protect her from. Henry, for his part, continued to go about his days with a sense of purpose and control. He was kind in his own way, though firm and exacting. He loved Eleanor deeply, but he showed it through acts of careful planning rather than overt affection. He would repair fences meticulously, tend the animals, and ensure that every corner of the farm was in order. Eleanor often watched him from the kitchen window, feeling a mix of admiration and frustration. There were moments when she wished he would be more open, more willing to share the thoughts that seemed to be locked away behind his steady gaze. Occasionally, Eleanor's mind wandered to the barn, and she imagined what Henry might be hiding. Was it a secret hobby, a forgotten project, or something more personal? She tried not to dwell on it, reminding herself that some things were not meant to be understood, that respect and trust were more important than answers. And so she continued her life with a quiet sense of routine, the barn standing silently at the edge of her vision, an ever-present reminder of Henry's authority. Neighbors sometimes asked Eleanor about the barn, curious about the stories they had heard from decades of family history. She would smile politely and change the subject, never revealing her thoughts. It wasn't that she didn't trust people. It was that the barn belonged to Henry and what he said went. There was a respect for his wishes ingrained in her, a loyalty that had been built over years of shared life and mutual dependence. Eleanor's days were long but full. She would rise with the sun, feed the chickens, and water the garden. She found solace in the rhythm of chores, the way each task flowed into the next, creating a sense of accomplishment and stability. Henry would often stand by the fence watching her work, occasionally offering a word of praise or advice. These small interactions, quiet and simple, were the pillars of their life together, moments of connection that required no grand gestures or declarations. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The barn would cast a long shadow across the fields, a silent guardian of secrets untold. Eleanor would sip her tea, feeling the warmth spread through her hands, and sometimes allow herself a fleeting thought about what lay beyond those doors. But always, she remembered Henry's warning and let the curiosity pass, tucked away like a secret of her own. Over the years, Eleanor's respect for Henry's rule about the barn grew stronger. Friends and family would tease her about the mystery, suggesting all sorts of fantastical scenarios, but she would laugh softly and dismiss the speculation. It wasn't just fear or obedience that kept her away. It was a profound understanding that some things were sacred, entrusted to one person for a reason. The barn was Henry's world, and she was content to live alongside it without intrusion. There were moments, however, when Eleanor could not ignore the pull of curiosity. On windy nights, when the doors of the barn creaked and moaned like a living creature, she would stand by the window and imagine opening them, stepping inside, discovering the truth that had eluded her for so long. She pictured old tools covered in dust, stacks of hay, maybe even forgotten treasures from years gone by. Each night the temptation grew, and each night she resisted, telling herself that respect for Henry mattered more than answers to questions that were not hers to ask. Time passed. As it always does, carrying with it changes that Eleanor could not control. Henry grew older, his movements slower, his voice gentler but still firm. Eleanor continued her daily routines, the rhythm of life providing comfort in the face of uncertainty. The barn remained as it always had been, a silent monument to rules unbroken, secrets kept, and love expressed in the quiet language of trust. In her quiet moments, Eleanor sometimes reflected on her life with Henry, on the choices they had made and the paths they had walked together. She thought about the sacrifices, the joys, the frustrations, and the love that had woven their lives into a shared story. And always in the background of her thoughts was the barn, its doors closed, its contents unknown, a reminder that even in a life shared, some mysteries remain beyond reach. The years rolled on, and Eleanor's world grew smaller as Henry aged. She found comfort in the familiar routines, in the sounds of the farm, and in the presence of her husband, whose care and attention had shaped the rhythm of her life. The barn remained untouched, a silent sentinel at the edge of the property, its secrets safe for the time being. Even as Eleanor prepared meals, mended clothes, and tended to the land, she carried with her a quiet respect for Henry's wishes. The barn was more than a building. It was a symbol of trust, of boundaries, and of the life they had built together. She understood, even without explanation, that some things were meant to remain a mystery, and that love could be expressed in ways that did not require full understanding. And so, Eleanor continued her life, the barn standing as it always had, a place of wonder and restraint. She went about her days with quiet contentment, finding joy in small tasks and the steady presence of Henry. The mystery of the barn lingered in her mind, a gentle curiosity that never fully disappeared, but it was tempered by the deep respect she held for the man who had guided her life for so many years. In this way, Eleanor lived, balancing curiosity with obedience, love with understanding, and the present with the secrets of the past. After Henry passed away, Eleanor felt a strange emptiness in the farmhouse. The walls seemed quieter, the rooms too large, and the silence pressed in from all sides. She missed the sound of Henry's voice, the creak of his boots on the wooden floors, and even the small irritable gestures he made that she had grown used to over decades. Suddenly the barn, which had always been a distant mystery, seemed to grow larger in her mind, an unopened door to a past she had never fully understood. The first weeks without Henry were the hardest. Eleanor walked through the house slowly, touching objects he had used, imagining him in the places where he had stood. His chair at the kitchen table remained in the same spot, the cushion slightly worn from years of use, as if he might sit down again at any moment. She couldn't bring herself to sit there. It felt too empty, too final. Eleanor spent her days tending the garden and taking care of the animals as she had done with Henry by her side. She fed the chickens, let the cows graze, and watched the sun rise over the fields. But the rhythm that had once brought her comfort now felt hollow. Every task reminded her of the absence of the man who had shared her life so completely. She often paused at the edge of the yard and glanced toward the barn, her curiosity beginning to stir again, though she pushed it down with a mix of fear and reverence. The children visited occasionally, grown and busy with their own lives. They spoke gently to her, asking how she was coping, offering to help with chores, and sometimes joking about the barn. Eleanor would smile and laugh politely, brushing off their teasing questions. "It's just an old building," she would say, though inside she felt a flutter of longing and wonder. The barn had never seemed like a threat before, but now, with Henry gone, it became a symbol of the life she had never fully explored. Some nights, Eleanor found herself standing at the window, staring out at the barn under the moonlight. Its shadow stretched across the fields, and the wind made the old wood creak and sigh. She could almost hear Henry's voice warning her again. Some things are better left alone. Yet now his absence made the warning both poignant and impossible to enforce. Eleanor felt a pull toward the barn she had never allowed herself to feel before. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a need to connect with the past, to understand the life she had lived alongside Henry but had never fully known. In her quiet moments, Eleanor remembered the stories Henry had told her over the years. He had spoken of the barn in vague terms, hinting at memories and plans, never revealing the full picture. She recalled how he would sometimes glance toward it while working, his eyes distant, a slight furrow in his brow, and then he would quickly turn back to her, a hint of frustration in his expression. Eleanor had often wondered if he had regrets or secrets, and now, those unspoken words weighed on her heart more than ever. As the weeks turned into months, Eleanor began to consider what it would mean to finally open the barn. She imagined stepping inside, running her hands over the old wood, breathing in the scent of hay and dust and discovering objects left behind. She pictured letters, tools, maybe even personal items that Henry had hidden away for a reason she had never known. The thought filled her with a strange mixture of excitement and fear. It was as though opening the barn would bring her closer to Henry, even though he was no longer there. Eleanor's sleep was restless. Dreams of the barn and what might lie inside filled her nights. Sometimes she dreamed of Henry standing at the doorway, smiling faintly as if approving her curiosity. Other times the barn loomed large and dark, threatening as if hiding something she might not be ready to face. Each morning she would awaken with a lingering sense of anticipation and anxiety, feeling that the barn was calling her in a way it never had before. She tried to distract herself with work. There were always chores to do, repairs to make, and plants to tend. Yet even the most engrossing tasks could not completely silence the questions swirling in her mind. She found herself thinking about the barn while chopping vegetables, feeding animals, and sweeping the floors. Its presence had grown from a distant curiosity to an urgent mystery she could no longer ignore. Eleanor also found herself talking to Henry in quiet whispers, as if speaking to him might help her understand what he had meant by keeping her away. "I wonder what you were hiding," she would say softly, her voice echoing in the empty rooms. Was it something wonderful or something I might regret seeing? There was no answer, only the silence of the house, which seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. Occasionally, Eleanor would take small walks around the property, circling the barn at a respectful distance. She examined the faded paint, the rusted hinges, and the piles of hay stacked against the walls. She noticed small details she had never seen before. A crack in the wood that allowed a sliver of light to peek through, an old rope coiled neatly near the door, and the way the wind whispered through the gaps in the boards. Each detail added to the sense that the barn was more than a simple storage space. It was a repository of memories, secrets, and perhaps even love. Despite her growing curiosity, Eleanor was still hesitant. She remembered Henry's caution and the respect she had always held for his wishes. It felt almost wrong to consider opening the barn, to cross a line he had drawn so clearly. Yet the longer she lived without him, the more she realized that some boundaries were meant to be tested, if only to understand the life that had been lived in partnership with someone who is now gone. Eleanor began to think of the barn as a kind of time capsule, a place that held the essence of Henry's mind and heart. She imagined letters in his handwriting, personal journals, and objects that told stories she had never heard. The thought that Henry might have left something for her specifically, a message or a project meant to be discovered after his passing, filled her with a bittersweet hope. It was a promise of connection, a bridge between the life she had shared and the one she now faced alone. The days grew longer, and the seasons began to change. Autumn came and the fields turned golden with the fading light. Eleanor continued her routines, but the pull of the barn grew stronger. She found herself standing at the edge of the property more often, imagining the moment she might finally turn the key, push open the doors, and step inside. Each day the anticipation built, a mixture of fear, reverence, and the longing to know more about the man she had loved for so many years. Eleanor's children noticed the change in her, the way her eyes lingered on the barn, The way her hands trembled slightly when she spoke of it, they encouraged her gently, suggesting that it might be time to explore, to see for herself what had been kept secret for so long. Eleanor listened, her heart pounding at the thought, yet she still hesitated. The barn was more than just a building. It was a symbol of her life with Henry, of trust and devotion, and she was unsure if she was ready to cross that threshold. Despite the hesitation, Eleanor could no longer ignore the call of the barn. She began to make small plans, imagining the tools she might need, the care she would take to preserve what she found, and the way she would experience Henry's world in his absence. Each plan brought a sense of purpose and excitement she had not felt in years. The barn, once a source of mystery and restraint, had become a beacon of possibility, a doorway to understanding the life she had shared and the secrets that had shaped it. Eleanor spent hours reflecting on her life with Henry, remembering the love, the routines, and the quiet moments that had defined their partnership. She realized that opening the barn would not just be an act of curiosity, it would be a way to honor him, to connect with the man she had loved and lived alongside for decades. It was an opportunity to discover the depths of his heart, the thoughts he had kept private, and the life they had built together, hidden in plain sight. And so Eleanor waited, preparing herself mentally and emotionally for the moment when she would finally approach the barn. She understood that the act would be both thrilling and frightening, a confrontation with the past and a step into the unknown. Yet she felt ready, knowing that this journey was hers alone, a final chapter in the story of a life spent in partnership, devotion, and quiet curiosity. The barn, with its secrets and its promise, stood at the edge of her world, waiting for the day she would finally turn the key and step inside. Eleanor had spent weeks preparing herself for the moment she would finally open the barn. Each day she woke with a quiet sense of anticipation and a touch of fear. She walked past the building countless times, imagining what lay behind the tall, weathered doors. Some days the idea thrilled her, filling her with a sense of adventure she had not felt in decades. Other days fear settled heavily on her chest, and she reminded herself to be patient, to respect the memory of Henry and the life they had shared. She started with small steps, cleaning and organizing the area around the barn. She swept away fallen leaves, picked up scattered tools, and made the space inviting rather than forbidding. The ritual of preparation helped calm her mind. She wanted to approach the barn with respect and care, not as an intruder but as someone ready to honor the life of the man she had loved. Eleanor also gathered a few supplies she thought might be useful: a sturdy flashlight, gloves to protect her hands, and a notebook to record anything she found. She carried the items from the house to the barn carefully, imagining herself stepping through the doorway into another world. Each movement was deliberate, each step measured. The act of preparation made the task feel real, and her heart raced with the weight of expectation. For years she had imagined the barn in countless ways. Sometimes she pictured stacks of hay and forgotten farming tools, the usual contents of a rural building. Other times she imagined something extraordinary: letters in Henry's handwriting, objects he had made or collected, reminders of a life she had not fully known. The uncertainty made the anticipation almost unbearable. She would pause at the threshold, breathe deeply, and try to summon the courage she had cultivated over the past months. One morning, Eleanor decided it was time. She took a deep breath and walked across the yard, carrying her small bundle of supplies. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the fields and illuminating the worn wood of the barn. The sight of it made her heart pound in a mix of fear and excitement. She paused at the door, placing her hand on the rough surface, feeling the texture of years, decades, and memories pressed into the wood. She glanced down at the old padlock, rusty but still functional, and retrieved the key Henry had left hidden in a small compartment she had never noticed before. Her hands trembled slightly as she inserted it into the lock. The metal clicked and released, a sound both ordinary and monumental. She hesitated, knowing that once the doors opened, nothing could be the same. Then, with a deep breath, she pushed the heavy doors forward. The doors creaked loudly, protesting their long years of neglect. Dust motes floated in the sunlight that spilled into the barn, dancing like tiny spirits in the air. Eleanor stepped inside slowly, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. The smell of hay, old wood, and earth filled her senses. The space was larger than she remembered, and the silence felt almost tangible, pressing against her ears. She moved cautiously, running her gloved hands over the surfaces she passed. Stacks of hay, old farming equipment, and long-forgotten tools were neatly arranged in their usual places. Eleanor had expected chaos, but instead found order, a reflection of Henry's careful mind. She walked past the familiar objects, each one sparking a memory of him. The way he sharpened the knives, the way he inspected the tools, the way he spoke softly to the animals. The barn seemed to carry a part of his essence, a tangible reminder of the man she had loved. At the far end of the barn, Eleanor noticed something she had never seen before, a small door almost hidden behind a stack of hay bales. It was old, with a simple latch, but it had clearly been used rarely, if ever. Her curiosity surged. Could this be the secret Henry had guarded so carefully all those years? She approached slowly, her breath quickening, and examined the latch. It was sturdy but not locked, as if waiting for her to find it. Eleanor's hands trembled as she lifted the latch and pushed the door open. A small room revealed itself, dimly lit by a single window that let in a thin beam of light. Dust lay thick on the floor and the air smelled of age and wood. Eleanor stepped inside carefully, her eyes scanning the room. It was filled with objects she could not immediately recognize, each one beckoning her closer. The anticipation of discovery made her pulse race. On a wooden table she saw stacks of papers, notebooks, and small handcrafted items. Some were clearly personal projects, others appeared to be gifts or messages intended for her. Eleanor picked up a notebook, her fingers brushing the cover gently. Opening it, she saw Henry's handwriting, careful and deliberate, filled with thoughts, reflections, and plans she had never known. She felt tears prick at her eyes, a mixture of sorrow, joy, and awe. Eleanor moved from object to object, each revealing a new layer of Henry's life. Letters addressed to her, written over decades, expressed love, admiration, and sometimes apologies for the secrets he had kept. There were sketches of projects, plans for the farm, and personal notes that showed a side of him she had never fully understood. The room was a testament to a life lived quietly but deeply, a life intertwined with hers in ways she had only begun to realize. She found a small box tied with a ribbon, her heart skipping a beat as she untied it. Inside were delicate handcrafted items, some with her initials, some with small messages of affection. Eleanor felt a lump in her throat. Henry had prepared this for her, a hidden gift that he had never revealed, keeping it safe for decades. She knelt on the floor, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, love, and care embedded in every object. The room seemed to pulse with Henry's presence. Eleanor felt a connection to him stronger than ever, even in his absence. She realized that the barn, once a place of mystery and restraint, had been a bridge between them, a final act of love and devotion. The secrecy was not meant to control her, as she had sometimes feared, but to protect and preserve something precious until the time was right. Hours passed as Eleanor explored the room, each discovery bringing a new wave of emotion. She read letters aloud to herself, touched objects with reverence, and reflected on the life she had shared with Henry. The barn had transformed from a symbol of fear and obedience into a space of wonder, memory, and connection. Eleanor felt a deep sense of gratitude and understanding, realizing that Henry had always wanted her to experience this moment, even if it had taken decades to arrive. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the small window, Eleanor sat on the floor, surrounded by the treasures she had uncovered. She felt closer to Henry than she had in years, as if the barn itself had been a vessel carrying his spirit, his intentions, and his love. She understood the care he had taken, the thought behind every hidden object, and the reasons for the decades of restraint. Eleanor knew that the discovery was just the beginning. The barn had more to reveal, more stories to tell, and more memories to share. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a desire to preserve Henry's legacy and to experience the life he had prepared for her in this hidden room. The act of opening the barn had changed everything, transforming fear into understanding, mystery into connection, and curiosity into a profound sense of closeness with the man she had loved. As she finally rose to her feet, Eleanor took a deep breath, looking around the barn with a newfound appreciation. She knew that the journey was far from over, that each object, each letter, and each handcrafted item held lessons and memories she would spend the rest of her days exploring. The barn was no longer a forbidden place, it was a sanctuary, a place where the past and present converged, where love, care, and devotion could be experienced anew. Eleanor stepped outside into the cool evening air, the weight of the barn's secret still heavy in her mind, but her heart light with understanding. She realized that the years of waiting, of curiosity held in check, had led to a discovery more profound than she could have imagined. The barn had become a symbol not of restriction, but of love, patience, and the enduring connection between two lives intertwined for decades. Eleanor returned to the barn the next morning, her heart still racing from the discoveries she had made the day before. The small hidden room seemed to call to her, and she could not resist the pull to explore further. She carried a small basket to collect any papers or objects she might want to examine more closely in the quiet of her home. The sun had just begun to rise, casting golden light across the fields and highlighting the old wood of the barn, making it seem almost magical. As Eleanor stepped into the barn, she breathed in deeply, savoring the smell of hay, wood, and earth. She approached the hidden room with careful steps, feeling a mixture of reverence and excitement. She had already touched the surface of Henry's secret world, but now she wanted to dig deeper, to understand the man she had shared her life with in ways she had never imagined. Inside the room, Eleanor began sorting through the papers and objects she had not yet examined. There were notebooks filled with meticulous notes, sketches of the farm and surrounding land, and plans for projects she had never known about. Each item seemed to tell a story, revealing Henry's thoughts, dreams, and intentions. She picked up a small journal, its leather cover worn from use, and opened it carefully. The handwriting was neat, precise, and filled with personal reflections, some written decades ago. Reading the journal, Eleanor discovered that Henry had been documenting their life together in a way she had never realized. He had written about their daily routines, the moments of joy and frustration, and his hopes for their future. Some passages were deeply personal, expressing love and admiration for her, along with apologies for the secrets he had kept. Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes, a mixture of sadness and gratitude washing over her. She realized that Henry's secrecy had not been meant to control her, but to protect something precious and to ensure that she would experience it fully when the time was right. Among the papers, Eleanor found letters addressed to her, carefully written and preserved. Each letter seemed to capture a moment in time, a thought or feeling that Henry had wanted to share but had not expressed openly. She read them aloud softly, feeling his presence in the words as if he were speaking directly to her from the past. Some letters were humorous, recounting small events and mishaps on the farm, while others were deeply emotional, revealing his fears, regrets, and unwavering love. Eleanor also found small handcrafted items, carefully made and preserved. Some were simple, practical objects, while others were more personal, tokens of affection meant for her alone. She held them gently, feeling the care and thought that Henry had put into each piece. It was as if he had left behind a part of himself, a tangible reminder of his love and devotion that could be experienced even after his death. As she continued to explore the hidden room, Eleanor discovered photographs tucked into envelopes, some of them old and faded, showing moments from their early years together. She saw herself in younger days, smiling and carefree, standing beside Henry, who looked at her with tenderness in his eyes. Other photos showed the farm, the animals, and small projects they had worked on together. Each image brought back memories, a vivid reminder of a life filled with love, work, and shared experiences. Eleanor felt a profound sense of connection as she examined the objects and papers. She realized that the barn, once a symbol of restriction and mystery, had become a bridge between the past and present, allowing her to experience Henry's life and thoughts in a deeply personal way. She understood that the years of restraint, the decades of curiosity held in check, had led to this moment of discovery, a culmination of a lifetime of love and devotion. Hours passed as Eleanor explored the room, her hands and mind busy with sorting, reading, and reflecting. She felt a mixture of emotions: joy, sorrow, awe, and gratitude. Each discovery revealed a new layer of Henry's character, a new insight into his mind and heart. She realized that he had been planning, thinking, and preparing in ways she had never imagined, leaving behind a legacy of love and care that she could now experience fully. Eleanor found a small wooden box, carefully carved and locked with a delicate latch. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling slightly, and discovered letters, trinkets, and personal notes intended for her. Some were from her younger years, reminders of milestones and special moments they had shared. Others were messages meant to be discovered only after Henry's passing, expressing his love, admiration, and apologies for the secrecy. Eleanor knelt on the floor, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion and thought behind each item. She realized that Henry had been thinking of her all along, even in secrecy. The objects and letters were his way of communicating love, care, and understanding across time, ensuring that she would experience the full depth of his feelings when she was ready. Eleanor felt a wave of gratitude and awe, realizing that the barn had been a vessel for this expression, a carefully guarded space where the essence of Henry's love had been preserved. As the day progressed, Eleanor continued to sort through the room, uncovering more letters, journals, and objects that revealed new aspects of Henry's life. She found sketches of projects he had planned for the farm, ideas for improvements, and even personal reflections on the challenges they had faced together. Each discovery brought back memories, insights, and a deeper understanding of the man she had loved for so many years. Eleanor also found notes that showed Henry's playful side, small jokes and humorous observations about their life together. She laughed softly at some of them, feeling his presence in the room as if he were sharing these moments with her in real time. The combination of humor, love, and reflection made the experience deeply human, connecting her to Henry in a way she had never anticipated. The hidden room became a sanctuary for Eleanor, a place where she could explore the past and experience the depth of Henry's love and thoughtfulness. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that the discoveries were not just about the objects themselves, but about the connection they represented. The barn, once a symbol of restraint and mystery, had become a space of understanding, reflection, and profound emotional connection. As the sun began to set, Eleanor carefully organized the items she had examined, placing them back in their original positions. She felt a deep sense of respect and reverence for Henry's meticulous care and thoughtfulness. The room had revealed a side of him she had never fully known, a side filled with love, planning, and an enduring desire to communicate with her across time. Eleanor stepped outside the barn, feeling the cool evening air on her face and the warmth of the day lingering in her heart. She looked back at the hidden room, understanding that it held more to discover, more stories to reveal, and more connections to experience. The barn had transformed from a place of fear and restraint into a place of love, memory, and profound understanding. Eleanor knew that her journey was far from over, and she felt eager to return, to explore further, and to continue uncovering the depth of Henry's secret world. The discovery had changed Eleanor in ways she could not fully describe. She felt closer to Henry than she had in decades, as if the hidden room had brought them together once more. She understood that the secrecy, the restraint, and the years of waiting had all been part of Henry's plan, a way to ensure that she would experience the full richness of his love and thoughtfulness when she was ready. The barn was no longer a mystery to fear, but a treasure to cherish, a testament to a life lived with care, devotion, and enduring affection. Eleanor had spent many days exploring the hidden room in the barn, and each visit brought new discoveries that deepened her understanding of Henry. She felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and wonder as she pieced together the thoughts and intentions he had left behind. The barn, once a place of restraint and mystery, had become a space of connection, love, and reflection, where she could experience the man she had shared her life with in a profoundly personal way. One morning, Eleanor decided to bring a small table and chair into the hidden room so she could sit comfortably while examining the letters, journals, and handcrafted items. She arranged her materials carefully, taking care to preserve the objects as she worked. The act of setting up her space felt symbolic, a way of acknowledging the importance of the discoveries she was making and the depth of connection she was experiencing. As she read through the letters again, Eleanor began to notice patterns and themes she had missed before. Henry had written about his hopes for the future, not just for himself, but for her and for the life they would continue to share. He had recorded his reflections on the challenges they had faced together, the joys and sorrows of family life, and the lessons he had learned over the years. Each letter felt like a conversation across time, a way for Henry to continue guiding and supporting her even in his absence. Some of the journals contained detailed plans and ideas for projects around the farm. Eleanor realized that Henry had envisioned improvements and changes he had never completed, leaving them for her to discover. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, thinking about how she could carry out his plans, honoring his vision while adding her own touch. The barn had become a place of creativity and inspiration, encouraging her to engage with the life they had built together in a meaningful way. Among the items, Eleanor found personal keepsakes that Henry had carefully preserved. Some were tokens of affection, small gifts he had intended for special occasions, while others were reminders of moments they had shared. She held each item with reverence, feeling the care and thought Henry had put into preserving them. It was as if he had anticipated her discovery, creating a treasure trove of memories and love to be experienced when the time was right. Eleanor began documenting the discoveries she made each day. She wrote notes about the letters, journals, and objects, recording her reflections and feelings as she explored Henry's hidden world. The act of writing became a way of connecting with him, of processing the emotions and insights that the barn inspired. She knew that these records would also serve as a way to preserve the story for her children and future generations, ensuring that Henry's legacy and their shared life would not be forgotten. As the days turned into weeks, Eleanor felt a profound sense of closure and peace. The mystery of the barn had been resolved, but in doing so it had opened new doors of understanding and connection. She realized that Henry's secrecy had been an act of love, a way to protect and preserve something meaningful for her to experience fully when she was ready. The barn had transformed from a symbol of fear and restraint into a sanctuary of memory, reflection, and enduring affection. Eleanor decided to share the discoveries with her family. She invited her children and grandchildren to visit the barn, to see the hidden room and to learn about the life and love Henry had preserved for them. She guided them carefully through the space, explaining the significance of each object, letter, and journal. Her family listened with awe and respect, gaining a deeper understanding of Henry's character, his intentions, and the depth of love he had for Eleanor and for all of them. The barn became a place of gathering, reflection, and storytelling. Eleanor shared anecdotes and memories, reading letters aloud and showing the handcrafted items Henry had left behind. Her family responded with laughter, tears, and quiet admiration, recognizing the thoughtfulness and care Henry had invested in the hidden room. The experience strengthened their bonds, creating a shared appreciation for the life and legacy Henry had left behind. Eleanor also found personal healing in the process. The years of curiosity, restraint, and anticipation had been transformed into understanding, connection, and fulfillment. She felt closer to Henry than she had in decades, experiencing a sense of love and companionship that transcended his absence. The barn had become a space of emotional renewal, allowing her to reflect on their shared life, process her grief, and embrace the love that remained. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor continued to explore the hidden room in the barn. She organized the items carefully, cataloging letters, journals, and objects, and preserving them in a way that honored Henry's intentions. She also began planning small improvements to the barn and surrounding property, inspired by the projects Henry had envisioned. The work gave her a sense of purpose, a way to engage with the life they had shared and to continue his legacy in meaningful ways. Eleanor invited friends and neighbors to see the barn, sharing the story of Henry's secret room and the treasures it contained. The visitors were amazed by the care and thoughtfulness Henry had put into the hidden space, and they listened with interest as Eleanor explained the significance of the letters, journals, and handcrafted items. The barn became a place of learning and inspiration, a testament to love, patience, and devotion. Through the process, Eleanor realized that the barn had not only preserved Henry's life and intentions, but had also preserved her own sense of curiosity, wonder, and emotional resilience. The discovery had been transformative, allowing her to experience love, connection, and understanding in a way she had never imagined. The barn, once a place of mystery and restraint, had become a symbol of the enduring bond between two people who had shared a lifetime together. Eleanor continued to reflect on the lessons the barn had taught her. She understood that love could be expressed in many ways, through words, actions, and even secrecy when necessary. She recognized the importance of patience, trust, and respect in relationships, and she felt gratitude for the depth of understanding and connection she had experienced. The barn had been a teacher, a repository of memory, and a bridge between past and present. As the seasons changed, Eleanor found joy in her daily routines once more, tending the garden, caring for the animals, and walking through the fields. The barn remained a central part of her life, a space she visited regularly to explore, reflect, and honor Henry's legacy. Each visit brought new insights, memories, and moments of connection, reinforcing the love and devotion that had defined their life together. Eleanor's life had been transformed by the discovery of the hidden room. The barn, once a source of mystery and restraint, had become a sanctuary of love, memory, and reflection. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had finally experienced the full depth of Henry's intentions and love. The journey had been long, filled with curiosity, anticipation, and emotional growth, but it had led to a profound understanding and connection that would remain with her for the rest of her life. In the quiet of the barn, surrounded by the objects, letters, and journals Henry had left behind, Eleanor knelt on the floor, feeling a sense of peace and closeness to the man she had loved for decades. She understood that the years of waiting, the restraint, and the curiosity had all been part of a journey that led to this moment of discovery and connection. The barn had revealed its secrets, and in doing so it had transformed her life, leaving her with a sense of love, fulfillment, and enduring bond that would never fade.